And with that, it is time to introduce our first speaker, and that is Alex. Alex is a Swedish full-stack TypeScripter who has developed the library tRPC based on a proof of concept by Colin, who also made the Zod library. I think Zod is a TypeScript validation library, if I'm not mistaken. He has been coding for over 15 years and is currently the CTO and co-founder at the startup tradebay.co. And with any further delay, I bring you Alex.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, Alex, nice to see you. I'm really excited about your talk. And in fact, we just talked before the stream. I think you have been a longtime member of the Prisma community, and even before that, of the GraphCool community, which was the company that we had before we turned into Prisma. So it's great to have you on the stream. And yeah, the stage is yours.
All right. I guess now it's there. Yeah, so I'm Alex. I'm here to talk about TypeScript and end-to-end typesafe APIs. So the structure of the talk that I will be going through is first, I'll do some intro and background and how I ended up doing a tRPC and who I am and some motivations and code snippets. And then I'll go do some live coding or show the coding live. Show some examples that we have on tRPC, and then we'll do conclusion, some questions and answers, which will probably be the majority of the talk. I hope people have some questions, and I can do some more live coding after that. So quickly about me, I'm the co-founder and CTO of a startup called TradeBay. On GitHub, I'm KATT, that's Swedish for cat, the cat, I mean. And on Twitter, you can find me on alex.js. I've been working with websites for a really long time. I started in the LAMP stack in the 2000s, but I've been working primarily with JavaScript and Node since 2011 or something like that. Also worked as an iOS developer. And in my JavaScript career, I used to be a really JavaScript cowboy, but nowadays I really love type safety. But we're not here to talk about me, so we're here to talk about JavaScript. So everyone in this call probably recognized this quote, and it's just really true for me because I decided a few years ago that I will use TypeScript for everything unless there's a really good reason not to. And that is not because JavaScript or TypeScript is the best language, but it's a good language that you can use for everything. And that leads to less context switching, smaller team silos, and better productivity. And JavaScript has gotten a lot of good parts since Douglas Crockford's book, JavaScript, The Good Parts. So let's talk about TypeScript, because I use TypeScript everywhere. And the problem I've been facing a lot that you can solve with like using GraphQL and code generation, or Swagger schemas with code generation, or declaring explicit API contracts or schemas, is that as soon as you do a request from a client to a server, you kind of lose the type safety of that, even if you use TypeScript on both ends. So I'll go through a bit of the process on how I ended up finding tRPC and working a lot with it. So, I started this product at this company about a year ago, and I really love GraphQL, so that was sort of an obvious choice to build a stack with GraphQL. But I also wanted to get up and running quickly, and Prisma was still in beta. So I ended up with a stack which was like Hasura and React, and create React app. Still using TypeScript everywhere, so a lot of GraphQL code generation and stuff. And as I'm sure all of the folks at Prisma knows really well, there's a lot of trade-offs with using backend as a service. It makes stuff that is already simple really hard, and stuff that is hard harder. So like continuous integration, when you have a backend as a service system, gets really complicated. You have to have different deployments that talk to each other. Same way when you actually deploy the app, if you want a lot of quickly get up a new environment or whatever. And Hasura has some limitations, and I've been stuck with quite a few bugs that's annoyed me as well. So I got to a point where I kind of wanted to build my own GraphQL server. I've done quite a few of those before. But then again, like I'm still sort of, even if I've been working with JavaScript and Node for 10 years, I kind of still miss my PHP days when I could just like write a database query next to my front-end code and just render that straight out. And I feel like this sort of created a lot of internal battles for me, because I've been a big advocate for GraphQL for many years, and I still am. But for the application we're doing, it's sort of a web app, and I feel like if there's a web app and one consumer, there might be easier ways to do things. So there's like there's a few different alternatives out there already. Like there's Blitz, and there's what's the other one, Redwood, and some others as well, I think. And I tested Blitz, and I also contributed a bit to both Blitz and SuperJSON. And the thing I really found amazing with Blitz is the sort of zero API data layer that they have. And the rest of the stuff I don't really care that much about, but the zero API data layer is really amazing. And I stumbled on a proof of concept made by Colin, where that really amazed me. He created a server router where he exported the types of that router and then imported those types on the front end, and could, in a typesafe way, fetch and put data up and down from the front end to the back end without any code generation involved. So I'm going to show you a bit how tRPC looks like in the current form. So I'll start with a vanilla example that doesn't use any React or anything, just HTTP fetch. So on the left here, you can see we have a tRPC server. So we create a router with a query called hello, and we return some data from that. We don't have to define any interface, any API schemas, or whatever. And then we export the type of that router. And it's important to note here that we export the type and not the whole route, not the whole object, because if you export the type, everything, there won't be any code actually imported on the client at runtime. It will only be for the compilation of TypeScript. So what we can do when we sort of export the type of a full route like this is that if we create a tRPC client here and do the query, which is the hello query, we can get both auto completion on the query name and inferred output straight from the server without having any sort of code generation, any schemas or whatnot. So you can basically just write code on the back end and the front end and use it over the wires, kind of like you're in the same project. And it's not tied to any specific library like React, even though I will talk about React in a bit. It doesn't have any dependencies. It's just using the browser fetch. And you can start using it. But the sort of counterparts of this for React look something like this. So the tRPC React library is a typesafe wrapper around React query. So you have all the functionality that you are familiar with in React query. And it works with Create React App, Next.js, and you can even use the React Native. And there's adapters for Next and Express, and helpers for doing like server-side rendering and static site generation. So I'm going to show some coding. Hopefully this will work. So like I showed you in the project before, first of all, the project I'm about to show you here, you can find that in the trpc.io/docs and then in the example apps. And it's this vanilla standalone server that we're going to start using first, where I used to show how it looks like when you're using it. So here's an app router.
Quick note, Alex, I'm not sure if we're supposed to see you code right now, but at the moment
I forgot about switching screens.
Happened to me a couple of times before.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Apologies about that. Thanks for interrupting me, Niklas. So the example I'm going to show you, you can go to the docs and then example apps, and you have the code here, and there's a code sandbox links as well. So I have that set up already on my laptop. So if we go to VS Code, you can see here that we have an app router that has a query called hello. And on the, I'm just going to show this running. On the right here, we have the client, and that gets a typesafe hello response. And if I just going to show you to how when you write a query, you get automatic type safety or type inference, so you get auto completion. And also you see that this has an optional ZOD schema defined. So here, in any sort of query that you defined in your tRPC server needs, in order for it to get input data, you need to define this validation schema for it. So in this example here, I'm using ZOD, but tRPC works with YUP as well. So this route or procedure is accepting one argument with a ZOD schema that has an object that has a name, but it's set as optional. So I can query this without passing an input, and you see the stuff is inferred. And if I create an object here and do control space, I can get the types that are on the input object. So if I change the type of this, for instance, we will see straight away that we get type errors because I'm trying to assign a number to a string, and this is passed the whole way through. And we have support for both mutations and queries. So query and mutation looks exactly the same. Internally, there's no difference. The main difference is that, and I mean, the only real difference is that the mutations are done over HTTP post, and the queries are made over HTTP GET. So the queries are really easy to cache and stuff like that. So you can see here when I save this, you have I have a node watcher here that runs this, and you can see that I get a create response from the mutation. So yeah, I'm going to see, was there anything more I want to say with this? No. So that's a basic sort of vanilla example of how to use tRPC. And now I'm going to show you a full stack Next.js example, because we can do this with React as well. So the next example I'm going to use is this Next.js starter with Prisma, because we're at the Prisma meetup. So I prepared this today, just before. So if you want to play around with tRPC, the best way to start is just to go to tRPC and the example apps and use the quick start option of the example. So this one, just do this and copy it in. I have already done that, so I didn't have to wait a minute for NPM to be done. So here we have a Prisma starter. And the first thing to note is the file structure. We have a Prisma, and everything looks like a traditional Next.js application. I think like most people are in this meetup are probably familiar with Next.js. And so you have the pages, and you have the normal things you see with Next.js. And one thing to note here is the posts route that I've created here. Here I have created a new router that I call a post router with a mutation add. There's a create example, there's a read example, update and delete. And in the context, I have passed in Prisma, which is generated with this schema. So we have a post that has a title and a text that I've generated. And the only thing that tRPC sort of exposes to as an API route is an API response handler that is in the API/tRPC/brackets tRPC. And in this file, you just export a next API handler with your root router, and you can then merge other routers on that. So you can structure your code and do a lot of different sub routers. So I'm going to show you how this sort of starter app looks like. So I've started this with Yarn DX, which gives me both Prisma Studio and tRPC. So when we use this, reload the page, you can see that we first do a post.all request. In my app, I have done a use query of post.all, and then I further down just loop through the posts that have been created, and even further down we just do a little form with mutation. So if I add some posts here, you can see what happens. I get a 400 response here because something is too small. There's even in tRPC you can also get this sort of error formatting, typesafe as well, but there's a section of that in the docs that I'm not going to go through today. And yeah, you can add a post, and you see here that first there's an HTTP post to post.add /API/tRPC/post.add, and then we fetch the new post. And everything that you can see here is typesafe and inferred straight from your router. So if I go to the post and try to send, for instance, a number instead of a string here, we will get an error, a type error that we're using the same, the wrong format, the wrong shape of the input, which is pretty cool. So it makes it really simple and fast to write API routes and just using them straight away in the client. And I want to show one last thing on the Next.js bit. So when I reload here, I'll do it with 3G instead. You'll see that I just have a 1 second delay here. You'll see that we have a loading and then we show the post. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just get this server rendered? And in tRPC, there's two different ways of doing that. Either you can use the things that are commented out in the page's index file, and you can use the static props, and there are some helpers in tRPC where that helps you prefetch queries and then load them into React Queries cache and then have them rendered before. Or you can go to the app and just go to, I'm not going through everything in how the project is set up, but basically we have a high order function on the app that sort of adds the magic of tRPC to the app. And you pass in configuration both for the server and the client. And if I just enable SSR in this bit here and reload this page or disable JavaScript, we can get the same page working without JavaScript, which is pretty cool. Or if you like statically rendered site, you can do that instead as well. So this would have been a lot easier if I had an audience where I could ask questions. But that is sort of the DX, if you will, of tRPC with Next. And there's a lot more features. I'm going to share my other screen now because I have a few more slides. not going to forget to do that now. Stop screen, and I will share my slides again. Tab. We have that here. So there are some more features that I haven't covered. You can add middleware to router, similar to in Express or whatever. You can do typesafe error handling and formatting. There's data transformers. So if you have, for instance, a date field and you want to pass that out of wire, you can add super JSON to just transparently use a data object from the server to the client and the other way around. There's experimental subscription support, and there's a lot of query helpers specifically for React, like paginated queries and typesafe optimistic updates and typesafe query invalidation. And another good question is, should you use tRPC? And my answer for that is, like, if you're a full stack TypeScripter and you're doing a web app and you don't have any consumers that aren't written in TypeScript, it's really nice to use. If you have a GraphQL API already and you have set up your code generation and all that, it's probably not going to add too much benefit for you. Or if you're a big team with silos or need a really super well-documented API, it might not be for you either. But it would be really fun to, if anyone would check it out. So some asks. Since a few months ago, I've been quite obsessed with working on this library. But if this talk enticed you to look into it more, I'd love to have some help on it. If you're a TypeScript wizard, there's a lot of open issues on GitHub that aren't issues, they're more like feature requests that are labeled TypeScript wizardry. If you're good at design, it would be nice with some prettier examples. And if you use like Svelte or Vue, I'd love to make some adapters for them too. So just get in touch. So yeah, that's it of my presentation. Do you have any questions?
That was a really, really nice talk, Alex. I learned a lot. Questions we'll be taking through YouTube comments right now, and so far there are none. In fact, for me, Alex, I had 3 questions throughout the talk, but literally your last slide explained them all. So like, I was wondering if you were planning to support like real-time functionality with this at some point. You said that this is like in an experimental mode at the moment with subscriptions. I did wonder about the specific use cases and like when it would be good and like not to use and like not good to use. You touched on that as well. And the one question that was not 100% answered, but like 90%, will this work in a React Native environment? Well,
yes.
Yeah, so probably as soon as it's using TypeScript, I guess it would work with React Native as well.
Yeah, so the React Query works with React Native. I haven't tested this myself, but I haven't added anything onto React Native that makes it so that it shouldn't work. But as long as you have a monorepo sort of setup with your backend and your app, and you should be able to import the tRPC route and create the tRPC client straight in the React Native app as well.
Right. Yeah, super interesting. We have one question from Nemo. So if I understand correctly, as long as the return type of the route resolver can be inferred, that type will be known to the client?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah. As long as you define a type in the backend, or define a type, or it can automatically be inferred on your backend, it will also be inferred the same on the client.
Cool. Maybe one last question still from like my end. You touched on this very, very briefly, but like when you looked at Blitz, like what was it that kind of triggered you to build your own library, and what were you still missing from Blitz here?
Like, I'm not sure if I want to use React forever.
Okay.
It's one of the reasons, and I want to create a React Native app as well. So yeah, it's and it's sort of like a full-fledged framework, and I already had an app that was built in Create React App, and I just wanted to add this sort of superpower of the Blitz. But one of the big motivators for working with tRPC is just it's been so fun to work on. Like, it's been super challenging. I feel like I have a PhD in TypeScript generics by now, because it's using a lot of crazy template literal strings and stuff that wasn't even possible to do 6 months ago, or a bit more than 6 months ago at least.
Yeah, it's really nice. Like, TypeScript is becoming more and more powerful, and it has a lot of very nice features that if you leverage it properly, or if you leverage them properly, they can really, really improve the developer experience. And I think you're on a great track there with tRPC. So I'm definitely excited to see where this is going. Yeah, thank you so much for the talk, Alex.
Thank you.
Sorry, one more question.
Permissions is through. So every incoming request can create a context on its own. So you can create a context for each. You create the context for each incoming request, and there you can access the sort of request headers or whatever. And then you create a context object that will be passed down to all of the resolvers. So it's similar to how you would do in sort of GraphQL Apollo land.
All right, perfect. Then I think that was the last question that we had to answer here. And thank you so much for joining us today, Alex.
Thank you.